Are the Titans having a real quarterback competition between Cam Ward, Will Levis, and the other free agents they signed? How is Cam Ward acclimating and integrating himself with the veterans? We're going to talk about all of that today on the Music City Audible. Let's get to it.
I think Cam's leadership, the way he's come in and the way he's, put his nose into the playbook and how he's just, getting around the guys, sitting at the practice, getting throws in, that's something that you like to see.
And just have a sense of direction and command of the huddle as well. And I feel like he has that. I feel like whenever he's talking, he has a sense of confidence that guys can feel. And I sense that, we'll be able to feed off of energy from him.
Just the energy that he brings, wherever he is, he's going to be himself. He's going to be a very confident guy. When you go out there and see him on the field, it makes sense why he acts the way he acts and, moves the way he moves. It shows on the field.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville. In partnership with 440 Sports and Broadway Sports Media, I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. And Justin, who we just heard from there at the top of the show in order was Van Jefferson, Dan Moore, and Tony Pollard talking about their new teammate, rookie quarterback Cam Ward. The Titans are well into phase 2 of their offseason program. They still cannot do any 7-on-7 or 11-on-11. They can't do any version of offense versus defense. Can't do one-on-ones yet. That will start next week in phase 3. But, Justin, we heard from Brian Callahan and a handful of Titans players yesterday after an OTA practice. That would have been on Tuesday afternoon. And we learned some interesting things about this team, about the structure of the offseason, about the quarterback competition that Cam Ward is embroiled in right now. We're going to talk about that and more. How is it going today, my friend?
Doing well. The press conference was really interesting to hear from Brian Callahan and select players. By the way, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was the first time we've heard from a bunch of the free agent additions, like Van Jefferson, Dan Moore, Cody Barton, like all those guys. They were speaking for the first time with the media. So it was no coincidence that they were selected, to speak. Because I think it was Paul Kuharsky earlier in the offseason was disappointed that those guys didn't speak, shortly after inking their contracts, if you will. So definitely a move purposely done by the PR to have those new guys talk for the first time.
And it's funny you mentioned that because Kuharsky actually asked Callahan during yesterday's press conference, Dan Moore is slated to speak to us today. Is it unusual for a guy to go 60 days on the roster without being, put in front of media? And Callahan said, well, it wasn't intentional. I think the day he was supposed to come speak, he had to actually leave town. So it just the way scheduling worked. We're not trying to hide these guys from you or anything like that, which Paul was seeming to imply was like because Dan Moore maybe didn't have the best season and was viewed as maybe an overpay that they were trying to hide him from media. But that was not the case. It was just a scheduling thing. He had a trip or something. So anyway, Justin, we're going to get into all this. I want to start with the QB competition. And if you're watching on YouTube and not just listening, every time I've said competition so far, I've used air quotes while saying it because this is the headline that came out of the press conferences yesterday. A lot of stuff came out that we're going to talk about, but the headline that was on ESPN that Adam Schefter tweeted Teron Davenport's story about was that there is a QB competition going on in Nashville. And one of the reasons that this is a headline is because Brian Callahan said right now, Cam Ward and Will Levis have been evenly splitting the reps, and he said that that is totally normal for this time of year. In fact, Brian Callahan said right now, it's not a competition. Right now, at this point in the offseason, it's not a competition. It's just two guys going out and practicing and going through the install process of phase 2 of the offseason and getting in work. So I want to ask you, Justin, because we've had a few comments about this, asking us to talk about this, and the reason we haven't talked about it yet, is there a real QB competition? The reason we haven't talked about it yet is because we both sort of assumed that like any competition that is put forth to the media is simply to make Cam Ward earn it versus just handing him the reins. But at the end of the day, it's not a real competition, is it?
No, of course not. No, there's no competition at all. And if you think there is, people will point to, Mike Borgonzi, Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes didn't start right away. Chad Brinker, Green Bay, Jordan Love didn't start right away. Very different situations. Both of those teams had, first of all, Packers had Aaron Rodgers in his prime, and the Chiefs had a good quarterback in Alex Smith, a very good, capable veteran bridge type starter. That's not Will Levis. Will Levis is the guy, is the main culprit why they picked number 1 overall, why they went 3-14. They're not going into this season with Will Levis in week 1. That's not going to happen. Not when you're coming off a 3-14 season, and he's arguably primarily to blame for that season. So no, there is no quarterback competition. Cam Ward, they can pretend all they'd like, prop it up, talk about him earning it. They're going to go through the motions. No, Cam Ward's the starting quarterback. There's no competition. I'll say this. The most interesting thing that came out of that quote that Brian Callahan talked about it and what came out of that, he said, he reflected on last year saying that and I'm paraphrasing, you might know the exact quote better than I do, but he essentially said, Will Levis was handed the starting job last year. We made it all about surrounding Will Levis. How are we going to build this team around Will Levis? He's our guy. There was no competition. And, Brian Callahan, going into his second year, reminiscing on what a disastrous season that was, it's natural you're going to look to do some things different and you're going to reminisce. So, I don't necessarily agree that it probably made a huge difference. I could understand where he comes to the conclusion that, hey, maybe we should have made him earn it a bit more last offseason. Maybe things would have gone a little bit better. Maybe he would have played better if he had to look over his shoulder in July and August and even in May and June, the calendar we are now. So I don't necessarily blame him for looking at that. It was such a colossal failure and just looking for ways to do things a bit differently. And he comes to the conclusion that, we handed Will Levis the starting job last year. We're gonna make things look a little differently this time around.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that is it was posed as a question to him. When you look at handing Will Levis the reins last year, have you evaluated that maybe there's a better way to do things, a little differently? When Joe Burrow was drafted to the Bengals in 2020, Brian Callahan was the offensive coordinator there in his second year. Joe Burrow wasn't named the starter coming out of the draft, right? He had to go, quote unquote, earn it. And part of that process of earning it is just earning the respect of your teammates. Because look, at the end of the day, the players are at practice. They can tell which quarterback is doing a better job of commanding the offense, of just being a better player. And they're going to rally around the guy that they view as the guy that gives them the best chance to go win football games. Because all these guys know that at the end of the day, they can do their job to the maximum level. If the quarterback lets down the rest of the team, it's a futile exercise for them to go out and be the best version of themselves. But if they believe that the quarterback is not going to lose games for them, they are motivated to, play at their best level because they believe that they have a chance to win every game. And you've seen that effect around the league. When Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay, other players in the locker room talked about, knowing that this is our quarterback now, it motivates us to be our best version of ourselves because we know that we actually have a chance to win every game versus this, the players that were still Titans last year. And I think Paul Kuharsky tweeted this yesterday, of the 91 players in camp for the Titans, 53% of them are new faces, either free agent additions, rookies, undrafted free agents, whatever. 53% roster turnover. But the 47% who was there last year knows that Will Levis was not giving them the best chance to win games, right? So there's not going to be a sense of the team resisting Cam Ward being QB1. They're going to rally around him, but that's part of the process of what they're going through right now. And again, every team handles this differently. Joe Burrow was not named the starter right out of the draft. Jaden Daniels last year was named the starter after the first week of preseason games, after Washington's first preseason game. That's when they said, you know what? He's earned it. He's going to be the starter. And the team has a moment to be celebrating their guy and rallying around that. Now the Bears, literally right after the draft, Matt Eberflus came out and said, Caleb is our starter. Now he didn't have to earn it. And we've seen some stories about, the drama that Caleb Williams endured in Chicago. But I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. But I do like the fake competition aspect and making Cam Ward go earn it and earn the respect of his teammates. And that whether or not it actually motivates him, I think he'd be motivated to play his best ball and get acclimated as quickly as possible, no matter what. This doesn't hurt that, though. And I don't think we need to make a big deal out of this competition. Agreed.
And I'll also quickly add that players also can see through bullshit as well, right? So a guy like Will Levis, for example, if he was handed the job last year, which he was, and they didn't believe that he should have been, that's going to frustrate, and that does impact locker room morale and culture and all that, right? Because, hey, they're building around this guy, but he's not really, playing well in camp. He's not playing great in practice, which he didn't. We had a lot of reports last year that Will Levis was sort of struggling in camp and in practice and things of that nature, but he was handed the job regardless. So, that could have a negative impact on a team. So it's good to see that they do want to do things a little differently this year. And I think the players will appreciate that they're propping this up as a competition, and they'll appreciate that Cam Ward is working his hardest to earn their respect.
And two more quick notes on the quarterback here before we get into the offseason structure and some quick hitting points we learned from this press conference. Callahan was asked about, when it comes to September and the first game being as a tough defense like the Broncos, he was asked, does Cam Ward need to show like a mastery of your system to earn that starting job by week 1? Or does he just need to show that he's like functional in this system and that he can continue building and learning just to have a chance to start week 1? And Callahan was totally evasive on this question. Basically said he's not going to make too many proclamations about September in May. So just like totally avoiding looking down the line right now, Callahan is focused on right now, getting better every day. And one other interesting thing, Callahan was asked if the quarterbacks last year changed or adjusted the plays at the line of scrimmage as much as he wanted them to. And he said they probably didn't do it quite as much as they would like. He said that there's, multiple ways to change the play. He said usually they have 2 play calls in the huddle and they can kill that first play call based on the look they're getting. But they also have just like protection adjustments, sight adjustments for wide receiver routes, and making those checks, especially on third down. He said that's something you have to earn as a player. Like you have to earn the right to make those adjustments. You have to earn the right to make those checks. And when you do earn that right, he said it can be an extra weapon for you. But putting 2 and 2 together, they didn't do it as much as they would have liked last year. And you have to earn the right to be able to do it. Do we think Will Levis did or didn't earn that right? And do we think Cam Ward can earn that right? One thing about Cam Ward's tape that I pointed out to you when we were talking about him during the pre-draft process, that Brian Callahan pointed out to a live audience during the live install show with Buck Rising and Greg Cosell, which you can watch on 104.5 The Zone's YouTube channel, we pointed out that Cam Ward called plays in the huddle, made checks at the line of scrimmage, adjusted protections, adjusted play calls, and so he earned that right at Miami. I think that he can come in and earn that right in Tennessee as long as he grasps the playbook as well as we kind of expect him to.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Will Levis and Mason Rudolph did not earn that right last year. Cam Ward will earn it this year.
Okay, Justin, we're going to move on now and talk about the new structure that the Titans have taken in terms of organizing this offseason. But first, a quick word about Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville. Justin, I'm coming to Nashville in July. My sister is turning 30, and she wants to celebrate her birthday in Nashville. We're putting a big, she's got a bunch of friends coming, family going, and we're throwing a party on a Saturday night in July in Nashville. Can you guess where I'm going to go to stock up for this party to make sure we all have the best time?
Would it happen to be Sinkers Beverages?
Sinkers Beverages is the place, the ideal place for me to go stock up. They're going to have,
smart.
You are smart. They have a really knowledgeable and helpful staff, just like you. They are smart, the staff. And when I tell them what my sister likes and what kind of drinks she likes, they're going to point me exactly to the right drink, the right liquor, or whatever drink my sister likes. They're going to point me exactly, here's what you need, here's how you mix it together. They're super helpful, knowledgeable staff. So anyway, we're very proud to be partnered with Sinkers Beverages, and we hope that you all will check out their website, linked in this podcast description, to join the free In-Crowd, because In-Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. So check out sinkersbeverages.com today. Okay, Justin, off-season structure. Something they are doing this time around that they didn't do last time around. And Brian Callahan said that this all stems from wanting to place an emphasis on not doing the things that lose you football games. And if you've been a Titans fan for a while, you may have heard Mike Vrabel say something along the lines of, don't do the dumb shit that gets you beat. Well, Brian Callahan isn't using that exact language, but it's basically the same idea. Turnovers, negative plays, penalties. They said they're putting a lot of emphasis on that. And at this time of the offseason, when you can't do any offense versus defense, you don't have pads on, you can't do contact, how can you really emphasize not taking a sack, not turning the ball over when there's no defense, not committing a penalty when you're not actually playing against somebody one-on-one? Well, the idea right now is to emphasize competition and team camaraderie. guys that want to play for their teammates and also hold each other accountable when somebody makes a mistake, having more voices of leadership in the locker room. And the way they're going about doing this, I love what they're doing here. It reminds me a little bit of something Mike Mularkey did when he first took over. And if you remember, Mike Mularkey changed the culture of the Titans. Even if he couldn't get them over that hump, he turned them from the 2-14 team that Ken Wisenhunt left behind into a playoff team that won a playoff game with Marcus Mariota. So Mike Mularkey did a successful job changing the culture. And what he's done, what he did that offseason, if you remember, was all these little competitions, like whether it was like Papa Shot style miniature basketball competitions or whatever, just creating a sense of camaraderie amongst groups of the team and competition. And so what Brian Callahan has done is he's divided the roster into 8 teams. Each team has a leader or a captain and an alternate captain, giving everybody a chance to sort of find their voice, exercise leadership, get to know their teammates outside of their position groups. They've rearranged the locker room so that the linebackers aren't all together, the offensive line isn't all together. And Dan Moore talked about how great it's been and how easy it's been for him coming into a new team to get to know players, especially ones that are not offensive linemen, and mixing and matching all these players. 8 teams gives 8 people who are the captains plus 8 alternate captains a chance to sort of find their voice as leaders and being able to hold each other accountable, because at the end of the day, a team has to play for one another. You can't play for yourself. You have to play for the guy lining up next to you. And that requires a foundation, and everyone has to buy into this approach. And having a bunch of leaders who are going to be able to step up and speak up and hold each other accountable when they make mistakes is a really great foundation for this team to build. Will this work? Will the Titans be a good team? Will Brian Callahan prove that he's a good head coach? Who knows? But all we can judge right now is what we know. And I really like this approach that Brian Callahan has taken, a massive overhaul compared to how they did the offseason stuff last season.
Well, I'm going to focus on a bit of a different aspect of it. You talked about, the exact quote was focusing on things like penalties, turnovers, things that win-lose football games. Okay. To me, I'd bet my bottom dollar that this is Brian Callahan, trying to, reflect and learn from last year's mistakes. Like, how many times did you and I say this is an undisciplined football team? They don't look like they're well coached. They take lots of penalties. They turn over the football. They're just a sloppy, bad football team. And you talked about it so many times last year in the post-game shows that we did on here. Mike Vrabel trying to find the hidden points, the little things that win games. That was not the Titans last year. They went big time in the wrong direction in that department. That's one thing Mike Vrabel was really good at, and Brian Callahan's Titans were not good at in 2024. So to me, this was clearly placing more emphasis on this after Brian Callahan's had a year to reflect and say, everyone knows it. This was a very sloppy football team in 2024. And look, you don't got to do 7-on-7, 11-on-11. Mike Vrabel would tell you this. Callahan would tell you this in order to learn discipline, right? Because half holding penalties half the time is just poor technique, right? It's poor hand placement. It's poor timing. It's getting outside the shoulder pads. It's poor. You can work on those things now, right? You can work technique. You can get better at the little things. That's what helps you avoid penalties during the regular season. So there's a lot of things they could do now, despite not doing 7, and 11-on-11, to just be a more well-disciplined football team.
Right. And I think it starts with that discipline. And again, this whole philosophy is based on creating a camaraderie that will allow everyone to hold each other accountable. And Dan Moore said that to be a good leader, you have to know your teammates. You have to learn the person across from you and know how to lead them. And he said that this 8-team competition is a good way for guys to learn each other outside of their position groups. Van Jefferson said all the guys are taking it pretty seriously. Tony Pollard said it just makes the team get closer. It's a great thing for the team in the long run. And that's why we have teams, is to keep guys accountable. And when he says teams, he means the 8-player teams. And Cody Barton said that there's TVs all over the facility with charts showing how many points each team has, with trend lines, where you were the day before, how many points you got today, if you're going up or down in the standings. So these guys are taking it seriously, and they don't even know what the offseason prize is. They know that the winning team gets a prize and the losing team has a punishment once we get deeper into the offseason, and they don't even know what they are. They're just competing for the sake of competing. And again, that builds a bond. Those eight teams, each one of those pods of people are going to be bonded together, and they're going to be bonded against the rest of their teammates because they're competing with them, trash talking. And you've seen probably the videos on social media of them doing, whether it's rock, paper, scissors, sled pulls, shuttle races, just different ways to create competition. And again, it reminds me of what Mike Mularkey did, I believe in 2016, when he put like a miniature basketball hoop in the locker room and made the guys compete over everything. And that just fostering that camaraderie. I think it's a really good step that Brian Callahan has taken, like you said, the self-reflection, looking at ways to be better. You and I are going to go through at some point in the next few days or weeks and do like a game-by-game win-loss prediction for the Titans schedule. And one of the things that I'm wary of when I look at the Titans schedule is how many coaching matchups are the Titans going to have the advantage in? Any? TBD. We'll see. There's a couple first-time head coaches on the schedule that we might be able to say it's a wash. But like, we can't judge anything but based what we saw last year. And going into this season, like, I'm pretty wary of the Titans ever having a head coaching advantage, right? But if he's going to, improve from where he was last year, this is a great way to start, is to show, like, what we did last year didn't work. I'm making a massive change. I'm overhauling the entire structure of the offseason, how we do everything that we do, the way the locker room is set up. Like, that's a good, encouraging sign that Brian Callahan is taking steps forward from being like a smart offensive play caller to a leader of the entire team. So we don't know how it's going to work out. If the Titans go 3-14 again, we'll say like, oh, none of this stuff actually matters. If they go 10-7, we might point to it and say, oh, look, the Titans created this camaraderie and they fostered competition, and look, it paid off on the field. Like, we don't know how it's actually going to work out, but either way, I think we are going to probably be talking about it again in September or October. But that's the thoughts on the offseason organizational structure there. I'm going to get to some quick hitters here, things that we learned from this, other things that came out of this press conference. And the first one to me that stands out is JC Latham. Now, apparently, if you've seen any social media videos or pictures of JC Latham, you may have noticed that dude is looking jacked. He looks to be in tremendous shape. He doesn't have like a 1990s offensive lineman build. He has like a 2025 offensive lineman build where they just look like superheroes, action figures. And Brian Callahan said that during his exit interview at the end of last season, they told him some things that they wanted him to work on. And one of those things was to get his body in better shape and in good enough shape to play 17 games. And Callahan said that JC Latham really dedicated himself to changing his body. He said he looks great, said he's in great shape, he's moving really well. Dan Moore talked about JC Latham too, and was kind of talking about how coming in as a veteran, helping out a young guy, that he can show him some of the little things that it takes to sticking around for a long time in this league, taking care of your body, what you eat, how you sleep, and show him some things that he doesn't know to do or not to do. But he also said he does a lot, actually. He said he's well-versed for how young he is in the league, but I do think I have some things to offer. But he said he looks amazing right now. I didn't realize how much of an emphasis it was for him last year. And then finally, Tony Pollard said he looks great. Mentally, all the plays are coming to him a lot faster. He looks like he's taken that next step. If the Titans as a team want to take that next step, offensive line play is going to be a critical part of it. They bring in Dan Moore, they bring in Kevin Zeitler, and they move JC Latham back to right tackle, where the Titans have not had quality play in years at the right tackle position. If JC Latham is truly taking that next step, that is huge for what the Titans' ceiling is, I think, this year.
Yeah, a big year for him moving to right tackle. I thought he was solid as a rookie, maybe not spectacular, but solid. Now he's going back to right tackle where he played at Alabama. He's going to have a great veteran right guard next to him in Kevin Zeitler. Last year he had, of course, a younger guy next to him in Peter Skoronski, and I thought they were a good duo and both have a bright future. But hopefully he benefits from having a veteran presence next to him this year. And again, free agent addition Kevin Zeitler at right guard. So really excited about JC Latham. I've got a ton of confidence in his abilities, his skill set. Very encouraged by what he put on tape as a rookie. I thought it was, fairly close to as good as it realistically gets for a rookie tackle. Not upper echelon, wasn't a Rashawn Slater type of year, but still a very good year for a rookie tackle. Sky's the limit. And, again, if this thing comes together on the offensive line, Titans can have a pretty good unit. And JC Latham's really, he's a keynote member of that at right tackle.
Yeah, totally agree. And just hope that, working another year with Bill Callahan, that he, in his body in better shape, that he takes that step forward and doesn't trail off. I think he started the year pretty strong, especially for a rookie, first snaps against NFL competition, but he really kind of trailed off at the end of the year. And I think part of that is the fatigue, the rookie wall, but being in better shape will certainly help him sustain for 17 games or more. What about more than 17 games, Justin? Talking about playoffs. All right, next thing on my quick hitter list here. Brian Callahan mentioned he'd like to see a more even workload split, a, quote, healthier division of labor between Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. He said they can do a better job managing it so that it's divided more evenly to keep guys fresher. Obviously, Tony Pollard dealt with an ankle sprain towards the end of the season that limited him. He played through it a little bit. It limited him a little bit. But are we going to see a more even workload split between these two guys? Is Kellel Mullings or Julius Chestnut or anyone or any other third back going to get involved a little bit here? This is our first indication that they want it to be a more even split. We'll see if that actually plays out. Both guys have to stay healthy for that to play out, or a third back has to emerge as being worthy of getting some of those carries as well. But I like that they at least are thinking about giving Tony Pollard more of a rest and getting Tajay Spears more touches.
Tony Pollard had the 8th most carries in the NFL last year at 260. In 3 of his last 7 appearances, he averaged 2.8 yards or less per carry. So this is a guy that was banged up at the end of the year, was playing through something, kind of pushed himself. And Tajay Spears, I've almost forgotten how electric he was as a rookie in 2023, right? I did the math this morning. 840 all-purpose yards as a runner and pass catcher as a rookie. That's behind Derrick Henry, right? A workhorse. Last year, he's injured, can't get past it a little bit. 535 all-purpose yards. So about 300 less yards with a lesser player in front of him in Tony Pollard compared to Derrick Henry. So they need Spears to get healthy. He gives them something that, not really, anyone else on the roster can't, in my opinion, right? Just a dynamic explosion at the running back position as a pass catcher, creative, manufactured touches, dynamic in the open field. Kellel Mullings, 6'1", 226, a bit different punisher between the tackles. Perhaps he gets into the mix as well. I think the Titans love Tony Pollard. They just know realistically 260 carries was a bit too much last year, and that doesn't factor in the work as a pass catcher as well, right? And as an occasional blocker in that third down role. So they need more from Tajay Spears. It'd be anything you get from Kellel Mullings or Chestnut would be a bonus. I think this is more focused on keeping Spears healthy and getting him more work than he got last year.
I totally agree. I have no concerns about Tajay Spears' abilities or talents when he has the ball in his hands as a player on the field. My only concern is, can he stay on the field? He's dealt with concussions. Obviously, he had the ACL removed from his knee in college. So he's not been a injury-free guy. He's been an injury-prone guy, So let's see if he can stay on the field this year, and that would be huge for the Titans offense. But if he can't, it'll be up to the next man up to take some of that pressure off of Pollard, because if Spears does get hurt at some point this year, that doesn't mean Tony Pollard should touch the ball 30 times a game, So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on how that is developing. Last thing to hit here is L'Jarius Sneed. Was the L'Jarius Sneed trade one of the worst, not trades, because trading A.J. Brown has got to be the worst trade in Tennessee Titans organization history, but acquisitions? Was the L'Jarius Sneed trade one of the worst acquisitions we've seen in the last decade from the Titans? Brian Callahan said his rehab process is still ongoing. He said in a kind of maybe sharing too much information kind of way that he'd like to see him practice more, that he's got to be able to practice and improve his craft, but they're going to have to balance and manage, workload and rest with getting him on the practice field. He said, he was asked specifically, is he still rehabbing the knee or the quad or both? And Callahan said, well, the knee is something that you just manage all the time, and he's still rehabbing from the quad injury too. Is this guy cooked? What's the deal? Is L'Jarius Sneed going to play football this year?
You're lying to yourself if you're not at least concerned. And Graver's obviously exaggerating a bit. He's going to play, but how much? How effectively? This mystery quad injury was a thing that was considered week to week in October or November. It's May, right? How are we're still rehabbing the quad injury that was initially considered week to week 7 months ago, and proved to be more serious than they thought and ended his season. And it's not a good sign that this is ongoing still. May is far away enough, but it's also far away enough from last October that it shouldn't still be a thing. So you're lying to yourself if you're not gravely concerned about this acquisition.
Yeah, so that's it, Justin. We recapped the Titans OTA press conference. Titans players are loving Cam Ward. I think he's been a great leader, bringing a lot of energy to the field, but he's in a competition. He's not even the QB1 yet, so he's got to continue to earn their respect. This offseason structure is a cool thing that Brian Callahan's doing, and we got some little nuggets there on a handful of players. So we'll be back later this week, I believe, where I think we're going to try to talk to Easton Freeze about his projected depth chart for the Titans. I think there's some interesting areas of disagreement that we have with how Easton sees things playing out and how we see things playing out. Easton has Will Levis projected as QB1, Justin.
Oh, dear Lord.
I'm kidding. No, but there are some other areas that we're going to pick apart with Easton later this week. And then, like I said, we're going to get to our win-loss full schedule prediction. So thanks to everyone for tuning in to this episode. We appreciate all of you. Thanks again to Sinkers Beverages. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Justin, can I tell you something crazy? Over the last 28 days, we have had 17,000 returning viewers. That means a viewer who watched a video on our channel and then came back to watch a second video. We have just over 3,000 subscribers on this channel. We got 17,000 of you coming back for more content, which we really appreciate, and we're very grateful that you continue to come back to the channel. I'm not complaining, but hit that subscribe button. What's stopping you? It takes 1 second. Just click that subscribe button. Help us continue to grow this channel so we can reach more Titans fans. So we can keep giving you this content, because it's not like we get paid to do this. You know, we have a nice sponsorship deal with Sinkers Beverages. We get a handful of tiny dollars from YouTube for every video we put out. But like, our big thing right now is trying to grow so we can make content for you. So if you're one of those returning viewers, again, thank you for coming back. Hit subscribe. It's not that hard. And drop a comment below and like this video so that it gets put into more people's feeds. We appreciate all of you. We'll be back later this week. Until then, y'all stay safe out there, and
Gotta tighten down.
A Broadway sports media production.